Welcome to the Tag Talks podcast. Today I'm joined by my good friend, former teammate, former roommate, and tag athlete, Curtis Newton. Kurt, how you doing, big guy?
I'm fantastic, buddy. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thanks for doing this. Why don't you just get everyone started with kind of like sport position, where you're from, what team you're playing for, and kind of how long you've been training with me.
All right. Yeah. I guess I'm originally from London, Ontario. From there, I went on to play at the University of Guelph as a linebacker. And then from there, I've played for the Toronto Argonauts, and currently I play linebacker for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And I think I've been training with you for the past two off seasons, I'd say.
Yeah, this is your second official off season with the Athletes
always
Garage.
Really kind of been training together, but yeah, first two off seasons with you as the head honcho, I guess. So
yeah. Things have kind of evolved over the years where we used to just go in the gym and get after it together. Now it's still fun, but maybe not the same for me, where I'm kind of just sitting there in the shorts and my hoodie calling the shots. But such is life. That's how things evolve. Just to kind of get the ball rolling, we'll go through our quick 6 questions. So what's your favorite meal?
Let's go with probably steak and like some mashed potatoes, I'd say.
Mashed potatoes. Yeah. Favorite exercise?
Probably any type of curl, I'd say.
Curl.
Big gun run guy, yeah.
Big gun run guy. Friday night gun runs were always a thing.
Yeah, those are my favorites.
What's your least favorite exercise?
Least favorite exercise? Probably like a split squat, I'd say. I don't think I'm a fan of split squats, but
you don't really like any single leg stuff.
No, not a fan, but they got to be done.
Yeah. If you could play any other sport or another position, what would it be?
I'd probably have to go with lacrosse. I think that was one of my loves growing up was lacrosse. So just out of my love for lacrosse, I think it'd be cool to be a professional lacrosse player and kind of see that side of sports.
I'm going to piggyback on that one before we move on. Are you going to play field or box?
I would definitely play field lacrosse.
Yeah.
I played both growing up, but if I were to pick one, field was definitely my favorite game.
Why did you like field more?
I don't know. I think it was just such a wide open game with so many different aspects to it. Whereas box lacrosse was more so comparable to basketball or hockey. But I think field lacrosse was just such its own unique individual kind of sport with so many different. There's the skill aspect to it, the physical aspect to it, the strategy aspect to it. So I just really love field lacrosse.
Yeah, I think for me as like a fan's perspective, like I never got to play lacrosse growing up, unfortunately. I really wish I did. But when I watch box versus field, like for something about field, just how you see the strategy unfold in front of you and watching, like, especially me being a defensive minded guy, just watching them do their shifts and how they play defense. Like for me, I was always like, man, this looks so cool. Like, and give me one of those long poles, man. I want to smack some people with that thing.
Man. Yeah, when that ball's on the ground and there's a loose ball, anyone within 10 feet of that ball is fair game. So there's always some massive collisions, and just you can catch the people with their head down for sure sometimes.
Just get to tee off on people.
Yeah.
Okay. In your opinion, best sports movie of all time?
Ooh, I'd have to go with Friday Night Lights, I think. I think that's probably the sports movie that's probably left the biggest impression on me, I'd say.
It's probably embarrassing if we were to say out loud how many times we watched that movie together in the years that we lived together. So yeah, I would say it's probably over at least 10.
For sure.
All right, last one here. And I know you're a big podcast guy, so feel free to unleash favorite podcasts, books, blogs. Like what are your kind of go-to resources for diving in on that kind of content?
Yeah, I'm definitely a big podcast guy, and I definitely probably be thankful for introducing me to the podcast world all those years back. But it's kind of jokes how you have your own now, and we were talking about it back then.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, podcasts. I definitely number one would probably have to be Joe Rogan. Just his versatility, all the different types of guests he has on. You know, if you want entertainment, you got that. If you want to learn a little bit, he definitely has some great intellectuals and stuff on his podcast. So if I would have to pick one podcast that would be my number one, it would be Joe. And then from there on, I probably have a solid rotation of like 6 or 7 different ones I listen to, either for entertainment or knowledge purposes. So, but if I had to pick one, it'd definitely be Joe Rogan, I'd say.
Yeah. Books? Any favorite books off the top of your head?
Yeah, I'm usually a non-fiction reader of books, and usually it has to do with some sort of military story or something like that. So if I had to pick one book, it'd probably be Black Hawk Down. I kind of like, I don't know, I find it super, super interesting to read about kind of the heroics and stuff like that people have been put through on the battlefield, and the things people are able to do when they're tested at their greatest limits and stuff like that. So yeah, that's the type of stuff I like to read. And yeah,
I love it. All right, so let's dive in a little bit and hear kind of the story of Curtis Newton. Like when did you actually start playing football? Like what were the teams that you were playing for? Maybe let's start with like kind of high school, that kind of stuff.
yeah, for sure. So I guess my first season of football would have been grade 9 in the high school, and before that I grew up my whole life playing hockey and lacrosse. And then grade 9 was kind of the first year where I decided to play a little bit lower level of hockey, so there wasn't as much of a time commitment, so that I would be able to play football in grade 9 and give that sport a shot. So so I ended up playing football in grade 9. I think I maybe played in one game that season. Didn't really know kind of what position I wanted to play. I'd always wanted to play football, but had never played anything football related before, other than at recess in elementary school. So, but you know, I played hockey and lacrosse, and I was always a physical player in those sports. So I think I was naturally kind of attracted to the position of linebacker. So that was kind of the position group I got shuffled in when they were, you know, separating the grade 9s and 10s into whatever position you wanted to play. So yeah, and you know, after that season, I think I got in one game, didn't really play that much, but still kind of liked the sport and felt like I didn't really get what I wanted out of it. So that summer, instead of playing box lacrosse, so indoor lacrosse, I decided to play for the London Falcons, the OVFL team there in London. And I had a few buddies who I'd met in high school that played football too. So obviously they pushed me to play summer football a little bit more. So that summer I ended up starting at linebacker and playing the whole year of London Falcons with my buddies, and just kind of fell in love with the sport from there, and just continued to play football from then on out. That was just kind of how I got introduced to the sport per se.
Yeah, and like you're like, obviously I know this stuff about you. We've been friends for a very long time, but yeah, your story is very similar to mine, right? You're just kind of playing lots of other sports, and then when you got introduced to football, something about it just kind of grabbed you. So
Right.
you first got introduced to football in grade 9 at Lucas. Big shout out to Lucas there in London.
Yeah.
Talk about your high school career. You know, did you play Team Ontario at some point? Did you continue playing summer football? Like, what was that high school chapter like for you to kind of lead you up to going to the University of Guelph?
Yeah, I guess from there on out, I no other words to describe it than, I guess, just fell in love with the sport, and everything revolved around it. And after grade 10, I decided to play summer football again for the London Falcons. And however, I didn't really play that much that summer again. I was part of the younger age group, and I think this summer we had something like over 70 kids on our roster. Like there's a ton of guys, and I just kind of got lost in the mix, didn't really play that much. Near the end of the season, I actually got moved to like receiver and just kind of finished the season as a backup receiver. So I didn't really get a whole ton out of that season of summer football, but I went back to high school that year in grade 11 and played linebacker and started for the high school again, and continued to love football. And the next summer rolled around, and I made the decision to not actually play summer football. I think out of kind of I don't want to say it was a negative experience, but just kind of out of the lack of growth I had from the last summer, I felt it would be better to just work out and train. And that summer I was fortunate enough to play for Team Ontario too in the Canada Cup. So I felt like that kind of exposure was enough for me, and I was able to give up playing OVFL for the London Falcons and just kind of focus on other aspects of football and other avenues to take.
Yeah. So you went and played Canada Cup. That team, you guys were out west somewhere, right?
Yeah, we were in Lethbridge, Alberta.
Yeah.
So we were in a place that actually didn't even have like a university football team or anything. So we were at the University of Lethbridge.
Oh, because that would have been summer 2011, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Because I played the summer before, and we were out east, and then I remember you played, and that was actually the first time I ever heard the name Curtis Newton, because I grew up in the region. I grew up in St. Thomas, just south of London, and I was, it was the summer after I played for Team Ontario, so I was kind of following along and seeing how they were doing. And the first time I ever heard about you was you got player of the game. Do you remember who it was against?
Yeah, I think it was the second game. I think we played 3 games. Was it the second game? Yeah, it must have been the second game. I got defensive play of the game for our team. So I think that was against Team Alberta. I think we still ended up losing that game, I believe. But yeah, that was kind of cool. And yeah, the Canada Cup was just a real fun, cool experience all around, I'd say. Just spending a week away doing nothing but practicing football and playing football. You just kind of get a taste of what it might be like playing university football for a little bit. So that was kind of my first exposure to maybe what football could offer after high school.
Yeah, and that was my exact experience with playing Team Ontario in the Canada Cup. I was just, everything for me up to that point was football, working out for football, trying to eat to get better at working out so I could get better at football. And my whole life wrapped around it. And then when I got to Team Ontario and I saw, how much more there was in terms of watching film, studying a playbook, actually having a playbook, it just exposed me to how much went into football behind the scenes outside of just working out. And that was when I was like, oh man, this is amazing. I love this so much.
For sure. And I definitely too, I should probably mention, I went to a high school with coaches that were really, passionate about football too. So I think I was lucky enough to play for a high school where the coaches cared, and, we had good equipment. We had good jerseys. The field was always taken care of. So that was always nice to have. I think that's something that's lacking in Canada in terms of the football world, is real passionate high school coaches that, really stick their heads out and try and grow the game. So I think I was always kind of thankful to have, Hayes and Samways to rely on to, push me in high school a little bit.
Yeah, observationally, obviously I was from the outside looking in. Yeah, you guys always had a solid operation going over at Lucas. I remember those coaches that you mentioned used to throw together the Let It Fly 7-on-7 tournament in the spring. I remember getting to go and play in that a couple times. I remember anytime I went to a local football camp, whether it was there was a really good one that I used to go to at CCH. There was the summer camp at Western. There was always Lucas coaches there coaching the positions up, and there was a real high level of coaching going on at Lucas at that time. And I think I'm pretty sure Lucas is still a pretty top caliber program in terms of even nationwide, right?
For sure. Yeah. So they always push their players to, try out for the Team Ontario teams and kind of do everything you can to to get better for the high school season really was what they wanted at the end of the day. But still, I was thankful to have coaches like that were passionate that were passionate for football like I was.
And just to kind of backtrack for a second, I don't even know if I ever told you this, but yeah, like I said, you got player of the game. That was for Timo. That was the first time I ever heard of you. I remember I was like pissed off because I was like, who is this guy in London going and killing it on Team Ontario? Like, that's going. I was going into my 5th year of high school at that point. You were about to go into your senior year. I was like, great, like another local linebacker that is going to try and compete with me for recruiting attention. Like, screw this guy. And then I remember I don't know if you remember this, but it was us, my high school, Parkside, big shout out Parkside. It was us, Lucas, and Banting. We did a 3-way scrimmage, little jamboree thing at, I think, whatever field in London. And we did that
citywide field. Yeah.
Citywide. Yeah. We did that preseason. We did that preseason before my last year of high school, which was also your last year. And I just remember like that bus ride into London. I was like, I'm going to be the best damn linebacker on that field today. Like, I don't care if that guy got player of the game and Timo, like, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to be the best damn linebacker on the field today. So thank you for, bringing out my A game for that jamboree.
Oh, no problem, man. That's a funny story. I don't think you've ever told me that one before. I definitely remember that jamboree though. That was good times.
It was, man. That was a lot of fun. So that leads you into your grade 12 season. And that actually that won't be the last time that we faced off that season. We'll talk about that one maybe a little later, but that leads you up to your grade 12 year. I know that you didn't go back for another year of high school like I did. So that leads you into your senior year. Obviously some of the recruiting attention that you were able to capitalize on from Canada Cup. That leads you into your senior year. What was that recruiting process like for you through that senior season?
Yeah, I mean, after the Canada Cup was the first kind of exposure I had to universities and actually talking to scouts. And after that experience, I started to receive a few letters in the mail. But I mean, I wouldn't say I was a highly recruited prospect, but I think all the local kind of Ontario schools knew about me. After grade 12, I guess I should backtrack a little bit. That grade 12 season, after the Canada Cup, we were lucky enough to have a good high school year, make it to the OFSA championship, and end up winning the OFSA championship. So there was a lot of CIS schools and OUA schools at that too. So it was really after that grade 12 season, I think, is where most of my recruiting attention kind of started, because I guess I would say I was introduced to the university coaches in the Canada Cup, and then kind of, I guess, solidified my name as a potential recruit after my grade 12 high school season. But I mean, if you were to ask me back then, I would have told you that I probably would have been going back to for a 5th year high school, like no matter what. I was always just had that kind of, I don't know, plan in my mind that I'd go back to high school for my 5th year, be the big dog on campus, be able to play high school sports for another year, probably dominate again. It would be another fun year. And that was always kind of my plan. And that's what the majority of my friends were doing too. So yeah, after that grade 12 season, I started to get recruited a little bit. And it was, like I said, mostly just all the local schools like Western, Guelph, Laurier, Waterloo, Queens, mostly all the Ontario schools. Didn't really get recruited too much outside of Ontario. And I went on a few visits, and they were all group visits though. I visited Laurier. Like, I went to a few Western games. They always bring some recruits to their university football games and have them, come down on the sidelines for warm up, stuff like that. And then the first actual, recruiting trip I went to Guelph with Jimmy Rowe and Eric Giltman, 2 other players from our high school. And that was the first kind of like real personable meeting I had with the Guelph coaches and stuff like that. And it was really the first time I maybe thought I would want to come out of high school because, you see the campus, you see the university, and you're like, this looks like it could be a lot of fun too. And, but I would probably still say, I was kind of planning on going back for high school for a fifth year. And then I ended up actually going on a visit to Queens. And up until that point, I was probably still planning on going back for a fifth year of high school. And then it was getting pretty late. It was probably around like, I don't know, April, June, when I think I decided that I wanted to commit to Guelph. And yeah, it was a weird decision. Like I know a lot of people probably struggle with that decision, whether or not they should go back for a fifth year or not. Obviously a lot of high school coaches, I think, push going back for a fifth year because they want obviously as many fifth year players on their team as possible. And I definitely see, a benefit to going back for a fifth year if like you have that reason, you know what I mean? I think I got to a point where I realized, well, one thing I realized was I didn't think I was maybe physically ready to play at the university level, but I think KMAC was able to, convince me that I was. I grew up, kind of watching the NFL Network and seeing all these 6'2", 250-pound middle linebackers, right? So I thought I was nowhere near. I mean, like I wasn't small. I was probably 210, 215 pounds coming out of grade 12. But so I think KMAC, was able to convince me that I was physically ready to play. And then, I kind of looked myself in the mirror and kind of thought that if I was going back to high school, it wasn't really for any other purpose than to have a really fun fifth year of high school. So for me, that just kind of wasn't enough to justify going back for that fifth year when I had an opportunity to try something new and go and experience a different path. So that was kind of the reason why I decided not to go back for a fifth year of high school. But each individual is different. Lots of guys go back for that fifth year of high school and they make the most of it, whether it's to upgrade classes or get bigger and stronger. There's a multitude of different reasons that can influence that decision. But yeah, that was just kind of what led to my decision to go into university and not doing the fifth year.
Yeah, and I think you said it best there, right? Like everyone's situation is different, and for some people, it makes a lot of sense to go back. For some people, like myself, you have no choice; you have to go back from an academic standpoint. And then, on the flip side of that coin, there's people like yourself who really at that point it wouldn't have made much sense, right? You had the grades to go. You were able to see that physically you were ready to go and compete. And at that point, you're kind of just stuck at that juncture where you're like, am I really going to get anything out of this fifth year? And to talk about, my story personally a little bit, like I didn't have a choice. I had to go back. I didn't ever care about school, grades 9 through 12. I did less than the bare minimum. I can confidently say that. So for me, I had to go back for a fifth year because I had to go and get the grades to actually get accepted into a university. And for me, that was the only reason I went back. I know from like a physical and skill standpoint, I maybe not physical, but from a skill standpoint, definitely, I kind of took a step back going for my fifth year because I was that much bigger, that much faster, stronger than everyone else I was playing against. And I actually developed a lot of bad tendencies in my fifth year. From an actual football perspective. But like I said, I needed the academics to actually get into university. So like I say, I think if there's people listening to this, it's don't compare yourself to other situations or other people. Like really, like you said, look yourself in the mirror and figure out what is going to be best for me long term, but also right now, what makes the most sense. And some other people I know, it's a maturity thing. They have the skill, they have the grades, they have everything, but they're like, dude, I looked myself in the mirror and I realized I'm 17 and I shouldn't be on my own quite yet. They didn't have that maturity and they've gone back and that's the best thing is it's getting to know exactly, where you're at in your journey and figuring out what's the best move for you.
Yeah. You definitely don't want to lie to yourself.
No.
And it wasn't even like, just going back on KMAC too, like it wasn't like he promised me I was going to come in at Guelph to start if I left high school or anything like that. It was actually like when I went on that recruiting trip to Guelph, he actually told Jimmy and Eric Gilton, and he told them, he's like, I could see you guys coming here and, you know, immediately playing in your first year. And he was honest with me. He said, you might, you know, take a little more time in your development, or, you know, we came in at the same year. They had a pretty thick line of fifth-year linebackers at Guelph that year, but, you know, I kind of took that as an opportunity. Well, if I don't play, I can learn from these guys, and then they'll be gone and able to pass down the reins. And yeah, it was all just kind of an accumulation of the perfect factors aligning right for me, and which all kind of influenced my decision to go to Guelph. Yeah.
Well, and like you said, K-Mac, who was our coach who recruited us to come to the University of Guelph, like he had pretty much the exact same conversation with me. He's like, hey, dude, I think, you know, long term you'll have a decent career, but I don't know, first year you're probably going to have to play scout. He's just like, there's a lot of things that you haven't been taught or coached up on, and I think we have to develop you. And to be honest, that was one of the biggest things that swung me towards Guelph, because every other school I talked to, I won't drop what schools they were, but I had one school call me and they say, you can pick, because I played like this fullback H-back hybrid in high school as well. I had one school call me and say, you can pick either H-back or middle linebacker and come in and start next year. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I cannot come in and start at H-back. Why are you telling me I can come and pick which position I'm going to start at? That's ridiculous. Like, I just took them off my list that day because I'm like, you're just blowing smoke. And I had some other schools, you know, blow some smoke my way as well. And then to go to Guelph and to have that sobering but honest conversation where they're like, nah, we don't really think you're that ready, but we want you. But next year is probably not in the cards for you. And I was like, hey, honesty, that's what I want to hear. I don't want in that recruiting process. You know, a lot of people want to blow smoke, and your job as the athlete is to really kind of take ownership of that process and not get caught up in people padding your ego and padding your stats, and really asking those hard questions. Where do I fit into the picture next year? Where do I fit into the picture over the next few years? And put the recruiter on the spot and gauge them out, because I think there's a lot of people that I don't want to say get lied to, but they might get caught up in some disillusions through the recruitment process, and then they regret their decisions. So for any high school athletes that might be going through the recruiting process, don't be passive in that process. Be active and really go in there with an agenda and ask informed questions and put the recruiter on the spot and see, you know, what is your plan with me over the long term? Not just right now, what do you have to say to get me to sign my letter of intent?
Yeah, exactly. And I think sometimes kids can get caught up in all the extra stuff, like the locker room and the jerseys and all that sorts of things. And for me, it was more about just wanting to flat out go to a place where I was going to try and win a championship. So I think for me, it was more if I saw those characteristics in K-Mac with being honest in me. I saw more characteristics of a championship team through that type of recruiting method than as if a recruiter would just tell me, yeah, you'll come here and be the starter and blah, 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 you know? So it more so reflects the mentality of the whole team, I think, than just the recruiting aspect.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head there with that. So that's kind of your recruiting process. That's what led to you making the really late decision to commit to the University of Guelph. And I had already committed at that point. I committed the end of January, and you were like early May. Something like that. I don't know.
I think you guys already had like the whole like recruit day and everything before I committed. So like, I was real late to the party, but looking back now, it was definitely the right call, I think.
No, for sure. And yeah, like you said, we had already kind of done our like welcome the 2012 recruiting class event and all this stuff. And then, you know, literally a month after that, I saw, you know, it was announced that you had committed, and I'm like, man, here's this guy again. Freaking, this guy's just coming to take my spot everywhere. Like, he beats me in high school. Funny. We didn't talk about that, but Kurt said Lucas won OFSA that year. The game that they had to win to get to OFSA, they beat the crap out of Parkside. That was a brutal game. So this guy ends my high school career. And I'm going into this recruiting event and I see all the other linebackers and I'm feeling really good about where I stand. And then this guy freaking commits to the team. I'm like, I don't know who this Wahoo is, but I don't like him. And that was just the immaturity of me at that point in my time,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Feeling threatened
for
by
sure.
other people. And then I remember we drove separately this time, but Guelph used to do these like summer workouts. I called them like SAQs or whatever. And I remember I drove up for one from St. Thomas by myself, and you were there. And I think it ended up there was lightning or something, so we didn't even practice. And I remember
Yeah, no.
you came up to me after as we were about to leave, and you're just like, "Hey man, like you're from St. Thomas, like we should just start carpooling." And then maybe not to toot our own horns too much, but I think that summer we were the only recruits that made it to every SAQ workout. The two of us were driving up from London to Guelph twice a week that whole summer. And
Yeah, man.
that was awesome. And that was kind of when our friendship was formed. Like after that first conversation, I was just like, you know what? This guy's not that bad. It's all good. He's a good dude. And I'm going to look forward to kind of competing and growing with him over the next few years. So now it's August and my parents drove us up to Guelph for our first day of training camp. And we're starting our rookie year, a couple of bright-eyed idiots going into we don't even know what we're about to get started in. So now let's kind of go into the chapter of you starting your career as a Griffin and kind of walking us through how that time of signing that paper and showing up to camp, and then to you ending your career as a Griffin and going on to the next chapter of your career in the CFL.
Yeah, man. So, geez, that feels like a long time ago, but just yesterday at the same time. Yeah, like you said, I guess me and you kind of just built that relationship driving up to those SAQs all summer. We kind of had, I'd say, very similar mindsets on goals and kind of what we wanted out of Griffin football. So yeah, I don't know, I remember that very first day of practice. Remember we did that like tackling, that weird like tackling. I don't even
It wasn't
know
even tackling. It was like
yeah,
it
I
was
don't know.
literally like it was buzzing your feet to break down for a
But
tackle, but for
yeah,
17 minutes straight, it felt like it was the worst thing ever. I just remember in
but
my head, that was the first drill we did as a defense. It was like
oh,
buzz your feet, buzz your feet, buzz your feet, and just keep going till we blow the whistle. And we did that forever. I remember like the second that drill was over, the thought in my head was like, well, you tried, man. You showed
yeah,
up to
dude,
camp, you tried, but this isn't for you. Like, just pack it in. You can't hang it at this level. Like, I thought
right.
my calves were gonna
Oh
explode.
man. And yeah, I felt the same. Like I was probably 2 reps away from passing out, I think. And the same thought went through my head, like, dude, like I'm probably gonna get cut. Like this sucks. Like, like I don't know what to do. But then, when that first practice ended, and then I think when we all got talking and we all kind of figured out we were all on the same page and feeling the same way, you're kind of like, oh well, we all kind of feel like this, it must not be that bad. Like, and you learn after the first couple days of practice, and it starts to get more fun after a certain point, and then it hurts. So yeah,
Yeah.
man, I don't know, it was definitely a shock, but at the same time, I loved it. I always loved training camp, and like I said, going back to the Canada Cup, you're literally just playing football, working out, and hanging with your buddies all day. So,
Yeah.
you forget how sore your legs hurt after a while. But
Yeah. I think we were both we were maybe kind of sick-minded a little bit, the two of us. Like training camp was like it's like freaking 20-day Christmas, man. You
right,
wake up, you're with your homies, you go and you get free food all day, you watch film, you work out, and you play football. Like
yeah,
what else do you want to do? Like those are all my favorite things.
right,
Like throw a few girls in the equation and I'm like the happiest cat there is, man. Like
yeah. I think I've gotten a little older. I think my opinion of training camps changed a little bit, but when you're young and the body can handle it, yeah, training camp's fun before you got to go to classes and stuff.
yeah.
But
So
yeah, man,
rookie year, I was just going to say rookie year for you. What did that look like?
yeah, so I was fortunate enough to be on the dress roster for that first game, and just purely in a special teams capacity pretty much. And yeah, I think I had a fairly good game personally, but I remember that game I'm sure most Canadian football players know the name Kyle Quinlan when he played for the McMaster Marauders, but they handed us a pretty good thump in that first game. I want to say the score was like,
I think it
well,
was
actually,
70. I
go
think they
back,
got in the
yeah.
70s, man.
And I think we had 7, and I'll never forget, like, it was the first or second play of the game. We threw a touchdown pass, like 40-yard touchdown pass. We were up 7-0, and I was like, oh, like, damn, like, we're all right. And then just, like, bombs over Baghdad, but, like,
Yeah. Oh,
just an absolute onslaught continued after that. But yeah, so yeah, after that game, I kind of had that same thought again. I was like, oh, like, I played one game, dressed one game. That's not so bad. Like, we got smoked. Like, there's no way I'm going to be playing again this year. But yeah, I ended up playing the whole year that year, all on special teams. Yeah, we ended up having a pretty good year as a team too. That was the infamous comeback game against the Queens that year in the semifinals to send us to the Yates Cup against Mac again. But so, that was I would say a good year for me in terms of my development and able to, get my toes wet on special teams and kind of seeing what the CIS football is all about.
yeah. So yeah, like you said, a little bit of trial by fire your first year at Guelph. I think we managed to do a little bit better in the Yates Cup versus Mac, but we still fall short.
For sure.
Which that wouldn't be the first time, unfortunately.
Yep.
But that goes into your second season with the Griffins.
Yep.
That was now the 2013 season. Yeah, 2013 season. Talk about kind of what that season was like and that the strides that maybe you were able to make through that off season to lead you into your second year with the Griffs.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't want to sound a little repetitive. I know you talked to Coral kind of a little bit about this too, but I think it's probably the case for a lot of first years is one major setback is learning that playbook. I think for me, I maybe got a little content with where I was in first year and being like, okay, I'm in my first year. I am dressing. I am playing special teams. This is a lot more than a lot of other guys. Like this is kind of sweet. I'm kind of happy with this. Never really invested that much time to learn the playbook, and I don't want to say I didn't need to, because obviously everybody should learn the playbook. But like I said earlier, we had a pretty deep roster of linebackers that, were going to get in the game before I did. But after that first year, I think me, you, and obviously Pat McGrath kind of realized, well, Pat's different. He was always kind of knew the playbook, that smart bastard. But I think that summer, I remember before training camp, me and you just sitting down with McGrath and pretty much just getting him to break down the playbook and teach us it and kind of teach us how he viewed the playbook and how he learned things. And after that, it was kind of like, like the moment I really, like, it clicked for me. I was able to see football from the strategic side of you, the playmaking side of you. So once I was able to kind of understand the defensive playbook and how it all worked, like, I don't want to toot my own horn, but like from there on out, whenever we had like the playbook tests and all that, I don't think I ever got lower than like a 99% on it. And the playbook, just once you just take the time to sit down for like an hour, 2 hours, especially if you can do that with people who are on the same page as you, it can make a huge difference. Football is really not a complex game once you can understand the basics of, the basics of defense, cover 1, cover 2, cover 3, and then kind of all the different variations that come along with the base plays. So I think that was really, like, probably I have to credit you and McGrath for really, like, all three of us benefiting each other and helping each other really learn the playbook was how I think I was able to take my game to the next level.
Well, and it's funny. I think it was with Parasoto on that podcast when we talked a little bit about that, like having those like-minded people around you and people that are in a similar situation, and kind of, you know, using that as like an accountability system. And so, like, just
Right.
that's an absolute game changer. Like you said it, me, you, and McGrath, we were three linebackers who all came in the same class. Pat and I were friends. We actually played Team Ontario together. The first day, the three of us were roommates in training camp our rookie year, and the three of us just kind of hit it off like three peas in a pod. But that the three of us kind of always stuck together, and we always leaned off one another. And, you know, we all brought different pieces to the puzzle, and we all kind of like fed and learned off each other and grew together. And I think that was, like you said, for your second year, that you think, in your opinion, that was a huge thing for you. Like, I can undoubtedly say, like, having you two guys in my corner and being able to learn from you guys. You both actually dressed as rookies, and I was the odd man out on scout team, but I took every opportunity I could to leech off of you guys, and that accountability system, I think, is what in part helped us all have pretty successful careers.
For sure.
So you master the playbook. You're a football genius now, and you're going into your second year. And did you start week one? You were starting right at the beginning of the year, right?
So I guess that could be a little lesson in itself. Yeah, we were in the end of training camp, and I was actually a second string behind good old Vince Lonsdale there, one of the infamous shit squad leaders. But yeah, but I think it was like 2 or 3 days before the game, Vince ended up getting, I don't know if it was pneumonia or
I think it was mono.
It was mono. That's exactly what it was. But he ended up getting super sick. And I remember Grandy pulled me aside and was like, you know, like, hey, I don't want you to be surprised or anything, but, you know, you're starting game one this week. So, you know, make sure you kind of got your shit in line. Like, you know, it's go time. It's for real now. So I was super, you know, nervous, but excited at the same time. And yeah, I ended up starting that game. I ended up getting an interception, and yeah, I don't know. We ended up winning, and from then on out, just kind of ended up starting every game from then on out. But I think it was a valuable lesson to learn because of how I was able to get that position, and how, like, you know, what was a good thing, how, you know, somebody else's, I don't want to say downfall, but mishap turned into, you know, my opportunity. So it was also a reminder for me at how quick, you know, that could be taken away too. So I think once I got that spot, and, you know, I was really reluctant to get complacent and give that spot up, because I knew, you know, if I were to get mono and not be able to play, someone else was going to get that opportunity to make plays and kind of take what's theirs. So that was a valuable lesson, I think.
Well, it's that old saying, right?
To learn. Yeah.
That old saying is luck is when preparation meets opportunity. Like, had you not mastered that playbook or whatever, maybe the coaches would have looked to sub an older guy into that starting position when Vince got sick, but because they saw the work that you had put in, and they knew you were prepared and you were doing the right things when that opportunity presented. Like, yeah, it might look like luck. Oh, Curtis got to start week one, his second year. Like, oh, it's lucky someone else got sick. It's like, no, you put in the work behind the scenes from the end of that season in your first year to earn that opportunity. And when you were ready, you took it and ran, and you never relinquished your grip on that starting spot. And then, so that was your first year as a starter in the CIS. I'm sure there was lots of growing pains through there, but, you know, I'm biased because I'm one of your good boys, but I'd say you had yourself a pretty good season.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a good year, and it was definitely, you know, good to get that taste of starting and being a part of the defense, and understanding how important it is to learn the playbook, because there is 11 guys around you that are counting on you to know what your job is and that you're going to do it to the best of your abilities. So learning all those lessons at a young age, I think is super beneficial. Yeah, but
And I'm sure those lessons served you, throughout the rest of your career and even up into this day, right? Where you're kind of at now in your career.
For sure, for sure.
So
And
second year, we lost to Queens
we
in the
lost to
playoffs.
Queens in the semifinals, I believe. I believe we lost to Queens in the semifinals because I think they went on to play Western in the AIDS Cup, I think.
It's all a blur for
But
me
yeah,
now, buddy.
whatever. But yeah, either way, yeah, I think we ended up losing to Queens that year in the quarterfinals or semifinals sometime around then. And, yeah, that led into third year, where I was able to start again, except, come in as the starter this time. So that was obviously something a little new and different, but it was nice to be in a little bit more of a leadership role, I'd say, have a little bit more of a stronger voice on the team. And that third year, I was lucky. I think that third year was when I was lucky enough to get, my OUA All-Star nod and the All-Canadian. So, and we ended up losing a heartbreaker of a game that year to McMaster again. So it was another successful year, I'd say. But
Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
And then,
But
so you had that successful third year. Like you said, you got the nod for OUA All-Star. You got the nod for All-Canadian. You got the invite for the East-West Bowl. And now that's kind of like, if we wanted to maybe parallel that to the earlier phase of your career, like that East-West Bowl was almost, maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, by the way, that East-West Bowl was almost kind of like your Canada Cup, but in your university, where that was what kind of put you on the radar for becoming a CFL prospect and really maybe seeing what that next level of football looks like.
yeah, that for sure. I'd say playing in the CFL is like, I was always like loved playing football and wanted to win a Vanier Cup. That was my main goal. If you had asked me in first year if you thought I was going to play in the CFL, I would have probably said you're nuts and out of your mind. I don't even know if I would have said I wanted to play in the CFL my first year. All I wanted to do in university was win a Vanier Cup, win a national championship. But yeah, like you say, getting the invite to the East-West Bowl was kind of the first time where I thought I might have an opportunity to at least get a chance to play a little pro football or continue on this journey. But yeah, going to East West, that was a real cool experience again. It was kind of the first taste of what pro football might be like. And, you get introduced to preparing for the combine and the draft process and stuff like that. So yeah, no, that was a real cool experience and something that made me better too. So yeah.
I remember, so like last week's guest, Luke Coral, me and Luke actually, we drove out to Montreal to come watch you play in the East-West game. And I remember Luke and we were driving, like me and you were living together at that point. And when you left for East-West, I remember when you left, I was just kind of sitting in the living room chilling, and I was like, man, I got a feeling that this guy's going to have one hell of a week. Like, I just had a gut feeling. And then I remember Coral and I were driving. We were about in Ottawa. I got to throw Luke under the bus here. No, I'm not. We stopped off to go to the bathroom. And when we got back in the truck, we were just shooting the shit, trying to figure out a way to watch, or I can't remember. His old truck was having some issues. So we were trying to figure out the radio. And I just remember I just like, it was quiet for a minute. The radio or whatever wasn't working. I was like, Luke, I'm going to put my money down on it right now. Like Newton's getting defensive MVP. Like, I've had some gut feeling this week that he's just going to kill it. Like, I'm saying it now so that when it's true, I look like a freaking, a psychic or something. I was like, he's going to get defensive MVP. And then lo and behold, the guy goes out there and has a pretty good game and gets defensive MVP. So I don't know. I maybe it's just because I was privy to the behind the scenes, and I saw how hard you were working and how seriously you were preparing for it. But I just knew when you left, like, I know the kind of guy that you are. And I was like, man, he is going to make the most of this opportunity, and he's going to absolutely kill it. So I know you probably wouldn't have said that because you're a modest guy. So I'm going to throw that out there and pump your tires a little bit, but also pump my own tires because, psychic, reading the future.
Yeah.
So
no worries.
fourth year, which was a great year. This is your final year at Guelph. It was a great year for you, obviously, again, as an individual, but as a team, we achieved one of our goals. We actually went on and were able to win the Yates Cup that year, and obviously you played a huge part in that. Any memorable bits from your fourth year besides the Yates Cup? Did you ever have a thought that was going to be your last season at Guelph?
Um, I knew it was probably a possibility. I definitely didn't think it was very likely. I always kind of thought I would come back for a fifth year, and it was kind of the same thing. Like looking back, like how I thought from going to high school to university, looking at university to the pros, I kind of just thought I was maybe not physically ready. You know, you look on TV, you see how big some of those pro linebackers are and stuff, and you just automatically think, you know, they're going to send me back or whatever for fifth year. Like I always just kind of thought I'd be back at Guelph. And like I said, I was always, you know, I played university football to win a national championship. That was my goal. So if there is always that possibility that could still happen, you know, I was always kind of gung ho for that too. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know. After that, I guess that was just a good year really all around. I mean, obviously we lost, but to pick out one or two moments from that year I think would be pretty hard. But I think that was just my favorite year of Guelph football, probably was that year, because we were just such a good team and all the stars aligned. And you know, we unfortunately ran into a hell of a good football team in the University of Montreal in that Mitchell Bowl. But I don't think we could look back on that year and say we didn't give her our best shot to win the national championship. But
Yeah, and that year, like and I don't do this very often, but whenever I look back and think about that year, it's just like it was just accumulation of so much work, right? Like we were pretty heavy in the fourth and fifth years on that roster that season, and there was a lot of guys in that locker room that had just been fully committed to what we were trying to do there at Guelph for a long time. So to,
yeah,
you know, I'll say this, and I said this numerous times. Like I didn't really ever give a shit about the Yates Cup because I had one focus.
no,
When I signed my letter of intent to Guelph, I had one goal, and that was win a Vanier Cup. So I mean, I've always been hard on myself, and I'm excited that we won the Yates Cup. But at the end of the day, like I didn't get to check the box that I wanted to. So it might be cool, but it will never feel that cool. But there was just so much work that went into that season over so many different years and so many summers where we were all together working towards this. So it really, like you said, I don't want to sound too corny, but it was a little bit of a magical year where things just kind of went our way and things worked out pretty well for us. So
yeah, for sure.
we win the Yates Cup. We lose to Montreal in the Mitchell Bowl. Season's over. Now it's just combine preparation for you. You got the invite to go to the national combine, and now it's just full force on, you know, trying to make that leap from university to pro. So what was that combine experience all the way through draft day? Like, you know, what was that process like for you?
I honestly kind of really enjoyed it. Obviously it's a little stressful, but one of the reasons I play football is for the preparation. I love kind of preparing for football. So the fact that leading up to the combine and the draft, really my main responsibility was to just train and get better. It was kind of a fun experience, but it was exciting. I mean, I kind of knew I had a chance at getting drafted, but I tried to take more of a expect the worst, hope for the best type of mentality to it, and not in terms of my work ethic and stuff. You know, I was going to do everything I could to get bigger, faster, and stronger, but I didn't want to put myself in a position where I was going to be disappointed per se and expect, you know, to go in the first couple rounds and not. So, you know, I was just had the mindset that if I get drafted, I'm just going to give whatever team that drafts me my best. So yeah, just prepared for the combine. I'd say, like, testing wise, I'd say I had a pretty mediocre combine. I've never been the type of guy that's going to blow you away with my numbers. I'd say I'm pretty, average across the board. I'm not the fastest guy ever. I'm not, the strongest guy ever, but I think I kind of do everything good. And I think, I where I shine is showing my, my work ethic and my compete level during those drills. So what I lacked in the testing, I think I made up for in the one-on-one drills, more specifically like the special teams drills. My draft, I think my combine was the first combine they kind of introduced the one-on-one kind of gunner versus blocker special teams drills into the combine. So I think those kind of things work towards my benefit. And yeah, I interviewed with, I think seven out of the 9 teams. Had interviews with them all and felt good about all the interviews, except ironically, the Toronto Argonauts won. I think if you ask anybody who's gone through the national combine, the Toronto Argonauts interview is kind of notoriously difficult when Jim Barker and stuff was there. So, I came out of that Toronto interview thinking that I definitely wasn't going to go to the Argonauts, but lo and behold, draft day rolls around, and I think I ended up getting drafted in the 5th round to the Toronto Argonauts. So it all kind of came full circle and worked out in the end.
Yeah, I remember you texting me that night. You're just like, bro, I just got roasted by Toronto. Like, that was so hard. Like, they definitely hate me. And then, yeah, I was. Like you said, the irony is definitely strong there that was actually the team that ended up selecting you. So you get your name called on draft day. Now you're going into your first training camp in the CFL. Comfortable territory for you because that year Toronto actually hosted their camp at Guelph. So you didn't have to go far from home. You weren't too much out of your comfort zone in terms of location and facilities, but I can imagine your first day in training camp with the Griffins in 2012. I can imagine that first training camp with the Argonauts in 2016 was probably that experience, but times 10. So what was that like, trying to cut your teeth as a pro and getting your name finally on that roster? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, man, I kind of had like you said, a bit of a unique experience, because a lot of the things that would make a lot of other rookies uncomfortable was kind of taken out of the equation for me, because our training camp was at Guelph. So a lot of other guys, are moving across the country from different countries, and a lot of situations going to a new place. But, for me to be going to my first training camp at the school and the place I've been living for the past 4 years made that that transition really easy, especially since, Ryan Newestieg, one of our good buddies, got drafted to the Argos too in the same class. There's 2 or 3 guys already on the Argos that I played with at Guelph. So just in terms of just the logistical transition, I guess I would call it, it couldn't have been smoother that way. I know a lot of guys could have a much different experience having to move to a different place where they might not feel as comfortable. But yeah, I mean, as far as the actual transition to football goes, I mean, that like the guys are going to be bigger and stronger. It's easy to see how jacked a guy is on TV, you know what I mean? But yeah, the biggest difference I would have to say would be that speed, because you can't see speed, you can only feel it, you know what I mean? And it's different once you get out there on the field and Brandon Banks is whipping by you on a go route, and there's just no way and humanly possible you're ever going to catch him, you know what I mean? Like, so just the speed of the game was just such a shock. So you just kind of got to learn different ways to adapt and maybe make up for your lack of speed with other things, like knowing the playbook and allowing you to play faster in terms of knowledge, maybe making up for playing fast with your knowledge and making it up with your lack of physical speed, I guess what I'm trying to say. So
yeah, definitely. And like the cerebral bit of it, I've said this, I only ever really played at a high school, and then I played Team Ontario, and then I played at Guelph. So I didn't go all the way to the pros, but I said every time, like I've talked to kids that I train or whatever, I'm like, man, the speed of the game, definitely at every level you move up, the speed of the game is going to go crazy, but cerebrally, like it becomes more important every time you take that step up the ladder. Like that step from high school where you just run around and just hit people to university and understanding like, okay, how do I actually play within this scheme? And then to make that jump to the next level, I'm sure just kind of your understanding of the game is what's going to allow you to play faster. And the smarter players might actually make more plays than the faster guys, because if you can read and diagnose something quicker than someone who might be faster, well, you'll get to the ball first, kind of thing.
Right. And
So,
like you definitely are a little just like starstruck too, when you first get to that pro locker room. Like there's guys in there who have played in the NFL, there's guys in there who have played for the top Division I teams, so you're kind of like thinking to yourself, like I probably shouldn't be here.
yeah.
Like
Why am I here?
yeah, but I mean, once you kind of get over that and you realize that this is the Canadian Football League, and you're Canadian, and this league exists because of you, and you kind of just realize that it is just football and they're just men like you, and as long as you're willing to do the same things and put in the same work, you can definitely make up for the lack of, I guess, talent per se that you think might exist.
Yeah. So, okay. So last season, we're going to kind of go about this maybe in a little bit of an ass backwards way, but last season was your 4th year as a pro?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
4th
Okay.
year.
So we don't know about year 5, folks, because coronavirus is kind of messing with the CFL and all that stuff. So draft day, you get to the Argos, you go to camp, you do your thing, you make the squad, like, kind of not quickly at all, but, walk us through that 4-year journey as a pro, and some of the ups and downs, and maybe some of the things that for people on the outside looking in, they maybe don't know that's going on in the league, and what players are kind of going through. So what were some of the ups and downs over that 4-year career in the CFL thus far?
Yeah, I guess the first kind of dilemma I ran into was, I came out of training camp, and you get put in a hotel room on that last day, and they basically just tell you to sit, wait in your locker room, and if you get a call to come down with your playbook, and if you don't, it's kind of like no news is good news, kind of wait and see if you make it to the 4 or 5 o'clock team meeting at the end of the day when everyone from the final roster is there. So after that first training camp in Toronto, I was sitting there waiting in the hotel room, and I ended up getting a call. So I was like, oh shit, I got cut, but I gave my all. It is what it is. I'll go back to Guelph for a 5th year. Not a big deal, but it turns out that, I got brought down, but they offered me a spot on the PR, the practice roster. So it turns out I wasn't cut. But I almost would have rather preferred to get cut, or preferred to just make the team, because now I'm put for, if most people don't know, if you get put on the practice roster, and you still have Canadian university eligibility left, you can make that decision to turn the offer down and go back and play university football. So now that was kind of the dilemma I was stuck in. I was, thinking, do I stick around on this practice roster, make decent money, and have an opportunity to maybe play some pro football this year, or do I go back to Guelph for my 5th year, take a shot at a Vanier, and give the CFL thing a shot again next year. So I know, living with you, I was struggling a lot that week, just those couple weeks, actually, I should say, trying to figure out really what I wanted to do, because I'd obviously loved playing university football and loved playing at Guelph so much that, deciding not to go back was obviously meant the end of that, and I wouldn't get that 5th year. So, it was almost like I was put in that similar situation in high school, and I was deciding to go back for 5th year high school or going on to university. So, anyways, the first, I ended up you have a number of weeks to make that decision if you don't dress any games. So the first game of the season rolled around. I was on the practice roster, and the first game of the season, we just get absolutely thumped by the Hamilton Tiger Cats. I want to say three linebackers got hurt. And yeah, it was a tough game, but then I'm thinking, shit, I'm probably going to get called up to play again. And, that's kind of what happened. The GM at Toronto kind of talked to me and said, there's a good possibility you're going to be playing this week in Saskatchewan. So, that week, I think for one night, I think I was up all night being like, this is my last night to think about this. Like, I'm either in or I'm out. Like, I gotta make this decision now. So at the end of the day, I made the decision to stay with the Argos, and I basically just used the same kind of thought process of what I used for deciding whether or not I wanted to go to university. So, I knew I had 4 good years at Guelph. I knew I kind of had experienced everything that Guelph had to offer. I knew what I would get if I went back to Guelph for a 5th year. I knew I would be playing with my buddies. I knew I was going to have a fun year of football. I knew we would probably be a half decent team and have a shot at a championship again. Or I could, take advantage of this opportunity that's been presented to me and try something new, try something unknown. And even if it's a bad experience, it's a learning experience. I'm going to at least experience something new, whether it's good or bad. So that was kind of what influenced me to stay with the Argos that year. And I ended up playing my first pro game in Saskatchewan, and it was the last season they played at the original Mosaic Stadium. So just to play my first pro game in Saskatchewan in front of that CFL crowd with the fighter jets flying over, and it was super cool, and I'm super happy I made that decision to stick around and not go back for that 5th year. But in hindsight, it's always easy to look back and say it all worked out, but I mean, it did. So for after that, I ended up dressing every other game that year for the Argos. So I was fortunate enough for it to work out. Unfortunately, we didn't have a good team a good year as a team that year. I think we ended up like 4-12 or something like that. So then because of that, I was kind of introduced to the more business side of professional football. And after that season, pretty much our entire coaching staff and management staff got fired. So that was kind of a shock, being on a team and not knowing who your coaches were going to be, or whether the new coaches coming in would like you, or all that kind of new stuff that I had never experienced before. At Guelph, we were fortunate enough to have the exact same coaching staff for all 4 years of our university career. So to kind of just experience the more business side of things, when at the pro level, if things don't go right, it's the coaches or the players. And in this situation, obviously a lot of the coaches and the management got fired from that team. So I was kind of obviously not thankful that people got fired and lost jobs, but it was beneficial to see that type of process after my first year, just to see how much of a performance-based business this really is. And it is about the wins and losses, and there's a lot more to it.
You guys are getting paid to win games, both players and coaches.
Exactly.
And when that doesn't happen, someone's got to pay the piper. And I think, for you, that was probably such a good opportunity to learn that lesson, just because, like you said, probably your rookie year, you're just trying to keep your head above water and figure out what it's like to be a pro, and to figure out, what does playing in this league really entail and what goes into it. And then you get to experience something like that firsthand. And now you're like, okay, shit. Yeah, I am a professional athlete at this point. No one's going to sit here and hold my hand and blow smoke up my ass and tell me how great I am. They're going to say, put it on the field, put it on tape. or get out. Right. So I
Right.
think, I'm sure for you, that was probably like a kind of a sobering experience where you're like, yeah, this is actually my job. This isn't just me playing football anymore because I just love it. I mean, you're still playing it because you love the game. Don't get me wrong, but it's not
Right.
just that anymore. You're paying bills with this. They're giving you
Mhm.
money for you to do a job, and if you don't do the job, well, guess what? Bye.
Yeah.
So the staff gets axed. Now you gotta go into year two with a management team and a coaching staff that didn't draft you. They don't
Right.
at this point, they don't really know who the hell you are, what you're about. You go in for year two in camp with the Argos. You make the squad again. And then that leads you into season two, where there were some changes throughout that year, right? I can't remember if it's year two or three that you kind of
Oh
had
yeah.
some back and forth.
No, it's definitely year two, and yeah. So like you said, going through camp. Well, firstly, like you said, a whole new coaching staff comes in, new management. Obviously they bring in their own guys, draft their own players. We get into training camp that year. I'm fortunate enough to make the team out of training camp that year, in a special teams role again, obviously. And then I think the first game of the year was against Hamilton again that year, and this time we actually put a pretty good beat down on Hamilton. We ended up winning a game pretty big. I had a decent game. And then the second game of the season rolls around, and it's against the BC Lions. And it was probably my worst game of football I've probably played. It was just one of those games where, nothing was going right. I mean, I can remember the first kickoff return. Um, I don't remember who it was on the other team, but I went back, got my drop steps, and some dude just came down and like blasted me and made the tackle, and I was just like damn, that was a bad look. And then as soon as you get that one thought in your head, you just put that pressure on yourself. It's like, okay, I got to make up for that bad play now. And one bad play led to another. I ended up getting a roughing the kicker penalty that game. I got blasted again on a punt return where a guy came down and caught me with my head down. And it was just one of those games where one thing was leading to another. So after that game, then the next day, well, not the next day, the day after, or whatever, you get a day off, but the next day we have a meeting. I come in, and obviously the special teams coordinator pulls me aside and says I might be down this week. So at that point I kind of knew something was kind of up, and I kind of understood, because I had played a bad game, and that staff had drafted linebackers that were on the practice roster at that point. And obviously, if like I said, it's a performance-based business, and if you're not going to perform, they're going to find somebody else who will. So for that week, I was put on the practice roster, and then the following week I ended up being released. So yeah, that was my first experience with the kind of the darker side of football, and being cut and released from the team. After it was early in the season too, so you kind of think you question yourself, you wonder if this is it type thing. But yeah, so ended up being released from Toronto. Was on not literally, but was on the streets for a couple weeks trying to just figure out what the next step was. And then fortunately, I ended up getting a call from the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and joined their team a week later. So yeah, it was definitely a crummy time and a kick to the gut at first. But like I said, just because it was a bad experience doesn't mean it wasn't a valuable experience. So I think it was good to have that kind of bite of humble pie, and just get brought back down to earth a little bit, and you're able to realize that this game isn't going to last forever, and you gotta take advantage of every opportunity and play every down like it's your last. So yeah, but anyways, I was one of the lucky ones that ended up getting another opportunity and getting picked up by Hamilton. And Hamilton was going through their own kind of stuff that season. When I joined them, I think they were 0-4, um, and we ended up going on like an 0-8 streak that year. So I got picked up by Hamilton, was on the practice roster for 4 weeks, and then I was finally able to dress, and I played 4 games for Hamilton. We were able to kind of turn the season around. We went on a 4-game winning streak there after going 0-8. We had a new coach in June Jones in Hamilton. Things kind of seemed to be looking bright and on the right track. And then kind of unfortunately, I want to say it was probably after that the 8th game, so the 4th win, right before we're about to fly out for Winnipeg on a day 3. June Jones brings me aside and says they have to let me go. They got to cut me. So lo and behold, I get cut again from the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and it was just one of those things. I've always been kind of thankful for June Jones. He's been was one of my favorite coaches. Reminded me a lot of Stu Lang in a lot of ways, but he was able to sit me down and show me like we've run into some cap space issues, and unfortunately that's a reality of professional sports, is that the teams only have so much money to give out, and a lot of times it's on a week-to-week basis depending on how the roster shapes up. In Canada, you got to think about the American Canadian ratios. There's just so many factors that go into it, right? So unfortunately, because of cap issues and because I was kind of one of the last guys to join the team that year, I'm kind of the one that has to get cut. So I get cut from Hamilton that day. Walk out to the car with my garbage bag full of equipment, throw it in the back of my Jeep, and I'm sitting there in my driver's seat, being like, damn, like twice in 1 year, this is definitely it. So, but anyways, I ended up sitting there. I called my agent. My agent was like, hey, sit tight, just drive home. I'll call you back in a bit. So I'm on my way driving home. 10 minutes after I called my agent, he called me back. He said, hey, how do you feel about going back to Toronto? And I was like, I'll play for anyone. I got bills that need to be paid. And he said, well, Toronto wants you back. And at this point, Toronto had a pretty decent year. They were about to make a run in the playoffs. So that night I ended up signing with Toronto. The next day, drove into Toronto. The GM there sits me down and says, hey, like, I know we just signed you today, but you got to do your medical because we need you to play in 2 days against Saskatchewan. So that day in Toronto, participated one practice, got my medical. We had walkthrough the next day, and that Saturday I was playing against Saskatchewan for the Argonauts. So it was definitely kind of a roller coaster second year, and it was kind of funny because like I was lined up on kickoff return across playing for Toronto, across from Saskatchewan, and like a couple of the Saskatchewan guys looked at me and like, dude, like, because when I was on Hamilton, we had played Saskatchewan the week before. So a couple of them were like, I just played you last week and you were on Hamilton. Like, how is this even possible? And I was just like, man, like, don't even ask. Like, I'm just trying to stick around at this point. But yeah, I ended up playing that game for Toronto because they ended up having some injury troubles throughout the year. And then after that game, they put me back down on the practice roster. But I was able to finish out the season on the practice roster, and it accumulated with the Argonauts winning the Grey Cup that year. So it was kind of a treat to end such a roller coaster of a year on a positive note and be able to witness a Grey Cup winning team.
Yeah, with a lot of your Guelph teammates as well, right? There's
Exactly.
A handful of the boys that were playing for the Argos as well at that time. But like you said, definitely some really hard lessons to learn in that second year. And I'm sure at some point you're like, okay, I have had enough of this humble pie. Like, I don't want to eat this shit anymore. Like this is
Yeah.
this is not fun. So Toronto wins the Grey Cup. You're probably like at this point maybe a little uncertain as to what your future in football looks like. You know, second year obviously was a turbulent one. We'll say it that way. Then you re-sign with the Cats pretty much like right after the season, no?
Yeah, so that was just another weird thing is because you finished the season, because I finished the season on the practice roster with the Argos, I automatically became a free agent. Sorry, so I was kind of put in a situation again where, the Argonauts did say they would offer me a contract, but as pretty much as soon as that season ended and as soon as they were allowed to talk to players, Hamilton called me and said that they wanted to bring me back and they were happy with what I did for them that season and that, they obviously didn't want to let me go, but I was just obviously a casualty of the salary cap. But so, they gave me that call and I kind of made that decision that I felt like I was wanted in Hamilton. So that was kind of why I made that decision to go back to Hamilton and sign with the Tiger Cats. So that was kind of how I ended up back there.
Yeah. And like you said, that's you felt there was something there with the Cats, and maybe they believed in you maybe a little bit more. Who knows? But something felt right. You went back to Hamilton for year 3. You guys had a so-so year that year.
Yeah,
How?
yeah, no, it was a good year. It was the first time as a pro I was able to play in the playoffs. We made the playoffs that year and ended up losing in the semifinals of the Grey Cup. So
Yeah.
yeah, we had a good year. I played my third year. Yeah, I was able to be a consistent every game player, I'd say, for the first time in my career, and really be an impactful player, I should say, with my role on special teams. So yeah, that 2018 season was one of my favorite years as a pro. I got to play with some pretty cool players and be coached by some NFL royalty, really, in Jerry Glanville and some other coaches. So that was a really cool year all around and one of my favorite years as a football player for sure.
And you actually got your first start that year in whatever the last week of the regular season. I remember that was a big day. Me and all the boys and all our kind of girlfriends and everything, we took up a pretty sizable portion of the stands, and we were there cheering you on for that one.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I almost forgot about that. That was pretty cool, and it was against our old buddy Johnny Manziel too. So that's something I'll look back on and always remember. My one professional start, and it being against such a prolific football name as Johnny Football. So yeah, man, that was super cool. That was a real fun year for sure.
The one, like I said, obviously we were there for your start, and I've tried to go to as many games as I can to watch you, but that game, you started on defense, and I don't think you were taking off any of your special teams, so
Oh,
you were like all over the field that day. And I remember when I saw you, like I at this point, man, we've been friends for like 7 years or 6 years or something like that. Dude, I don't think I've ever seen you look that ghostly as when you came out after that. You're like, you look deprived. Like, it's like, someone get this kid a sandwich, man. Like, he's about to die here. Guy just probably played like 85 snaps.
yeah, man. Yeah, for anyone who plays Canadian football and knows kind of how fast that game is, especially at that level, yeah, I was, and unfortunately, as much as I was thankful to get that start, when you're put in situations where, your team's able to give some of their big name players a rest, unfortunately, you got to pick up the slack on defense and maintain what you already do for the team. So, but at the same time, I would never, trade that experience
Oh
for
yeah.
anything. Be able to play a full game on defense while playing special teams and just being able to soak up and really play play in a non, you're playing to show that you can play defense, but at that point in the season, our playoff spot was secured. It was really, I could just go out there and focus on just playing football and enjoying the moment. And, it reminded me of playing linebacker in university again a little bit. So, it was definitely a good treat. I'm happy I got that chance.
You almost got your mitts on the ball too, didn't you? Didn't you get that?
I did a little bit. Yeah, I got a little tip, but yeah, no, it was still fun.
I remember they got you on that play in like the second quarter or something. They hit a little skinny post in behind you, and
Yeah.
I was and they got it and they completed it, and I was like, man, if they hit that again. I said it out loud again. I was trying to go 2 for 2 on my psychic abilities. I was like, yo, if they run that play again and they try and hit that skinny post in behind Kurt, he's going to pick it off. And I'm sitting in the stands and I see they run that play. I see the inside slot receiver break on that skinny post. And I'm like, dude, he's going to get this pick right here. And you just got a finger on it. I was like, damn,
yeah, man.
Thought I was going to go 2 for 2, but
yeah, dude, I don't want to be that guy. But do you mind if I go run and grab my computer charger for a sec?
Oh, yeah, not at all.
I just realized I only got 2% on this bad boy. I thought
there
I had
you go.
Well, sorry, pal. I'll be right back. I'll go grab it.
No worries. While we wait for our dear friend Curtis to go get his charger, and we'll finish up this story here. I think the coolest thing, like obviously, like I got to have a front row seat on this journey that Kurt went on this whole time up to this point. We were still living together as roommates, so I kind of got to see everything. But when you're immersed in it, you don't maybe take in everything that's going on. The coolest thing for me so far has been kind of hearing the parallels between his high school and his university career. Like, he had some doubts coming out in his 4th year, going into his 5th year of high school. He makes a decision to move on to university between between getting drafted after his 4th year at Guelph and, being put in that position where he has to make a decision again to whether or not he wants to go back to university. It's just kind of cool how you see these parallels. Canada Cup was his first exposure to recruiting for the university level. The East-West Bowl was this first exposure opportunity for him to the CFL. It is almost hilarious to hear it out loud and to kind of take it in that he's had these kind of paralleled stories between both chapters of his football career. So that was one thing that just stuck out for me there. And then before we give the mic back to Kurt, I wrote this down, and I really hope that people didn't sleep on what he said, because I think it's probably the most valuable thing that people could take away from this was the quote, "Just because it was a bad experience doesn't mean it wasn't a valuable one." That shit right there, that blew me away. That's some profound stuff for a bearded meathead over there in London. But yeah, just to kind of tie over while Kurt got his charger, I think those are some of the biggest things that I kind of pulled out from this conversation thus far. But we are back.
Yeah, sorry about that, man. I was super unprofessional for my first podcast round. I feel bad. But
don't worry, there's no rules over here on Tag Talks. We can have as much fun as we want.
Give you a chance to practice your editing skills, maybe a little bit.
Oh, buddy, I don't know how to do that. This is we're going one take, baby. That's how we do.
There you go.
So where were we? We were talking about we just finished talking about that first start with the Cats. You finished up your 3rd year. You guys had a decent playoff run, but you didn't punch the ticket to the Grey Cup. You're left longing for that opportunity to play in the big game. You're back with Hamilton for your 4th year. This is the 2019 season. Now, walk us through last year. How did it go? I know, for most people that are listening, they kind of know how it ended, but give us that behind the scenes firsthand experience for you guys on that 2019 Hamilton Tiger Cats season.
Yeah. So like I said, 2018 kind of ended, and it had been one of my favorite football seasons in recent memories. So I was super eager and excited to get back with the Tie Cats, and we ended up having a coaching change too, several coaching changes with the Tie Cats. June Jones moved on to the XFL. Same with our defensive coordinator and linebacker coach. So, you know, I was kind of in a similar situation again, but I was thankful that Orlando Steinauer, our head coach right now, he had actually been a part of the 2018 team as an assistant head coach and helped with the offense a lot. So he kind of he's a well-known figure around the CFL. He stepped right in and took over that head coaching position, and yeah, he really just instilled a championship mindset in our team this year, I think, and we were able to kind of take that mindset and ride with it to a shot to play for the Grey Cup. So yeah, it was an incredible year. One of probably the best, most talented football team I've been a part of, for sure, from top to bottom, coaches to managers. I can't remember I think we ended up going 15-3 this past year.
Record-setting year for the Ticats, correct?
Record-setting year for the Ticats. And you know, realistically, those 3 games we lost, we could have very, very, very easily have won. So yeah, it was an incredible season. And we did it all. You know, we lost our starting running back early in the year, who was on pace to have maybe a potential most outstanding Canadian season. We lost Jeremiah Mazzoli, who has been a perennial most outstanding player candidate the past couple seasons. So, you know, we it wasn't like we went through some adversity or didn't face any hardship. So I think that was another reason that this team was so special, was that we were able to be so successful no matter kind of what came our way. And I think that's a sign of a true championship team. And I know it didn't obviously turn out that way in the end, but yeah, it was from a team perspective and a personal perspective, it was a really good year all around.
Yeah, like you said, you guys faced some adversity early on in the year, and obviously it goes without saying, obviously I'm a huge Canadian football fan, and I love taking any opportunity I can to watch the Canadian game. I love it so much. And man, watching you guys play at the beginning of the year I was just like, dude, I don't know if I've seen more exciting Canadian football than really just really offensively. Like your defense was your defense was just outstanding. You guys were unbelievable. But watching your offense, like I don't know when Mazzoli went down, maybe week 4 or 5, something like that. But those first few games, I was watching you guys. What's his name? Sean, the running back. Sean.
Sean Thomas Erlington.
Yeah, I just blocked that guy out of my brain. We'll talk about that in a sec. But man, watching him and Mazzoli together, dude, I was just like, this might be the greatest Canadian football I've ever seen. This is amazing. And then to see you guys kind of weather that storm through both of those guys going down. And to see you guys kind of still go on to have this record-setting year, you know, obviously you're always left with this, oh, what if, but from an outsider looking in, and for someone who does, who coaches as a living, I was so impressed by your head coach, and how I was just thinking, man, this guy must be cut from a different kind of cloth for him to lose like the absolute foundation of his offense and to still get the guys to rally and have this record-setting year. Like I was so impressed, just from an outsider's perspective looking in. Real quick tangent, because we did briefly mention it. The running back that we mentioned, Sean Thomas Erlington, we were at Guelph. This was going into our 3rd year, right? 3rd year we went out to Montreal.
Yeah,
I think it was 3rd year.
So.
Anyways,
yes.
Like I said, I've tried my absolute darndest to block this stuff out of my head. We went over to Montreal for a little exhibition game. I was in at middle linebacker, and I don't even remember. Like I said, I'm trying to block it out, but essentially, the most embarrassing moment probably of my football career for sure was I got my feet tangled up in the hole, and Sean Thomas Erlington, he put me into another like universe, like full on truck stick. My head bounced off the turf. Oh my God. And when we
Oh
got in
yeah.
film, you know, when that kind of stuff happens, when you go through the film, everyone gets their shits and giggles and we get
Yeah.
our chuckles through, but holy smokes, man.
Trust.
That was when he earned my respect, man, because I ain't never been hit like that in my life. I've never seen my head bounce off a turf, I don't think, and that was the first time. And yeah, he was just an absolute unit and a hell of a player. So I'm really looking forward to him making a comeback, just from a fan perspective, because I mean, if someone's going to embarrass me like that, I want him to go on and have a great career so that I don't feel so bad about myself.
Yeah, man. There's definitely no shame in that. He's made
Oh,
plenty of grown men feel quite emasculated over the past couple of years
oh my
with his
God.
play. So, but yeah, man, I was hoping we'd be able to, you know, showcase what we're able to build off of that 2019 season last year, because I think I didn't think it was possible, but I think we did get better as a team for this upcoming season. So I hope that we will have the opportunity to show what type of team we are, and hopefully take that next step and win a Grey Cup. But yeah, that's kind of out of our hands now. But yeah, that 2019 season was a real treat for sure.
Mm-hmm. So this has been like an awesome story to tell of you kind of going through, you know, not dressing at all your grade 9 year at Lucas, or hardly dressing or whatever it was, and to now, finishing the 2019 season with a Grey Cup appearance, and now it's just a confusing time, right, with the coronavirus and all this like uncertainty up in the air. You don't really know what is next for, you know, the CFL as a whole and yourself personally, but such a great story. Obviously I'm biased because you're one of my closest friends, but it's just really cool to kind of almost extract myself from our friendship and just kind of hear you tell your story, because it's not like we sit around in our living room when we were roommates together talking about this stuff. Like we're too busy messing around doing whatever it was that we were doing in those days.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it is cool to kind
Behaving
of,
ourselves.
yeah, and it is cool to kind of hear you share your story. And I think the lessons that people could learn if they listen to this, to you tell your story, are so valuable, right? Like you weathered a few storms, you had some ups, you had some downs, but the consistent theme for you was always, every time a door opened for you, you were ready to just hard charge through that thing. And that's just because of the preparation that you put in. And I've been fortunate enough to see that firsthand throughout your career. But um, for any of the high school kids or university kids that listen to this, like if you take anything away from that, from this podcast, take that away. Like just work your ass off behind the scenes, because that's what's going to enable you to shine when you get your opportunity. And when you get that opportunity, if you have put in the work, man, you can run with it and you can never look back. And that's exactly what Kurt's done. And that's why, you know, I have so much respect for him, as a former teammate, as a friend, and a guy that's been in my corner for a long time. So, you know, so much uncertainty, so much whatever. No one knows really what's next for you. I guess
Yeah, man.
maybe as we wrap this up here, like, yeah, that was maybe my synopsis of your story, and me saying these are the things that I think people could learn. But what advice would you give to, you know, any of these high school, university, football players that are out there that might listen to this? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, man. I don't know. Like, I mean, I would definitely say I don't think I've been lucky enough that I haven't come from, you know, the worst situations. You know, there's been lots of guys who, you know, are dealt a far tougher hand of cards in life, and you know, have to work a little bit harder. But I think the one thing I would just say is just try and kind of do the easy and the little things right. You know, like I kind of said earlier, and you know, I'm not the fastest, I'm not the strongest, I'm not the most athletic player ever, but One thing I think I've been pretty consistent at doing is the little things, and like being coachable, listening to your coaches, showing up on time, uh, body language, having the right body language, having the right attitude, just those things that are so easy to control and easy to do, can make up for any other, you know, shitty things you might have, for
Yeah.
lack of a better term. I don't really know how else to explain it, but yeah, just do the little things right. I mean, we both probably have a ton of examples of guys who, had all the right talent and tools in the world, but they're always late, or they had an ego problem which didn't allow them to listen to coaches, or they didn't think they had to work out that hard, or they would just freelance on the field or do whatever. But yeah, I guess if there's one thing I would say that's gotten me this far, is just doing the little things, right. I think one term I've heard a lot over the past 4 years is, and I've heard you talk about it on the podcast before, but just, be a pro. And you don't got to be a pro. You don't have to be a pro to be a pro. You know what I mean? Like, you don't need to be the most elite athlete on earth to do the little things right. So yeah, that would probably be my one piece of advice.
Yeah. And being a pro it's a mindset thing. It's like you said, there's no job too small. There's no like thing that is unimportant. It's you're fully immersed in that, and everything that comes with what you're doing. And that's the sleeping, the nutrition, like you said, body language. Like the thing that I love the most about your answer there to that question is, like, man, doesn't matter your athletic abilities, doesn't matter opportunities that have been presented to you. Like, those things are 100% in your control. And if you don't have the skill sets to do those things right now, like, how easy is it to work on how you show up in terms of body language and attention? How easy is it to be the first guy in the meeting room when you got a meeting, or the first guy at, like, that shit is so simple. And don't overlook it, because that's really, when it comes down to it, that's really going to be the stuff that's going to get you an opportunity. And then the coaching and all that stuff, if you're receptive to it, man, like, you can really change your circumstances by just not sleeping on the little things.
For sure. And yeah, like, I'm sure, well, me and you both know guys who would, show up to workouts or practices, and, they would think that what the coach had to say was wrong, and not then because they thought that they wouldn't listen. And, a lot of the times, maybe the coach is wrong, but I'm still just going to do what he says because he's the coach. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I think once you realize that being consistent at doing the little things will actually get you a little farther, and then once you build that rapport with the coach, you might be able to bring up some things to him, or question him, or maybe constructively criticize things in an appropriate way, as opposed to just writing them off because they don't like you and you don't like them, and because you don't like them, they automatically don't know what they're talking about. So like, I don't know. Whenever, I mean, like I said, you and I both know guys who would come up and be like, oh, the strength and conditioning coach is an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about, blah, blah, blah. He won't let me work out after hours. He won't let me, work out now instead of later. And it's like, okay, man, but like, when we had that team workout yesterday, you completely ignored what he was saying and weren't following instructions. Like, I've never been in a situation where I've asked a coach if I could work out or if I needed something where they weren't giving me it, because just purely out of the respect that I would just listen to them in the first place. You know what I mean? So I think once you just doing the little things right and doing it consistently, you'll find it'll get you a lot further in the long run than, that short little temporary kind of feeling of ego where you think you're right and they're wrong type thing. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Well, and I think like I can personally attest to this. Like I've learned so much from you over the years, for sure, without a doubt. But that, I think that was one of the biggest things that I learned from you. And I definitely wasn't perfect at it. Like I had definitely lots of interesting times myself as an athlete, and I've tried to learn from the mistakes that I've made, and try and take what I'm doing in this chapter of my career as a coach and trying to help people avoid making the similar mistakes. But I think that's one thing that I've definitely learned from you, is that, sometimes you just have to set your pride aside or whatever's going on, and just do the thing. Just do the thing. I know there's definitely maybe numerous occasions where, in practice or something, I might have piped up and said something to a coach, and maybe I was definitely wrong for saying that, or whatever. And you sat there and you did the work, and you just went about your business, and we went home, and you said the same things, and you're like, yeah, man, I felt the same way. And for me, it was like, well, then, you know what, like, maybe there's something to it. Like, why am I the asshole that's saying something about it? And he's just, feeling the same way, but he's not doing anything about it. And I think that's one of the biggest things over the years that maybe I learned from you. And that's a lesson that I'm trying to, now teach other people, and say, hey man, like, I made these mistakes. You want to talk about mistakes? I'm your man. I'll
Right.
How much time you got? I can tell you about them all. And that was definitely one thing that I've learned from you. And I appreciate that so much. Is there anything else that you want to say here before we wrap it up?
I don't think so, man. I don't know. This was a lot of fun. It was a cool little introduction to being on a podcast and kind of seeing what you've been talking about for a few years now finally come to fruition. And so it's kind of been a real treat to watch you accomplish some of your goals and get started on this thing that we were talking about way back when we were sitting there in university eating a Domino's pizza after a night at Frank's or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, no, it's been a real treat. So yeah, thanks for having me on and giving me a little opportunity to speak a little bit, whether people want to listen or not.
Hey, the pleasure is all mine. And like you said, you have probably sat, probably the only person that's had to probably listen to me ramble on about what I've wanted to do for my life, more than you, is my girlfriend Taylor. But you've definitely sat in the living room or on the bus or wherever and listened to me talk about, what I wanted to build in terms of a gym and the kind of culture that I wanted to create and all that stuff. So I appreciate you for all those years listening to me. And I can assure you that I'm just getting started, man. Like this is, I don't know what this will end up being, but I know that it's, I'm going to put everything in there. And I think I'm only scratching the surface with it right now. And to have guys like you and all the other boys that are willing to kind of dedicate their time and energy to come on and kind of help me with that and believe in me and come and train with me, that stuff means the world to me. And I just want to say thank you for all the years and for the last couple hours coming on here and sharing your story and sharing your wisdom with, like you said, whoever might listen to us. So stay on here. I'm going to end the recording now, but I want to chat with you for a little bit second. So anyone that was listening, try and take some of the things that Kurt was saying and act on them. Leave no stone unturned. Do the simple things and just shut up and work.